A former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world and Pan American champion, our guest today battled a mysterious illness that ravaged his mind and body. After years of failed treatments and uncertainty, he even contemplated suicide before finally discovering the root cause: mercury poisoning. Through detox and healing, he transformed his life and now helps others navigate detoxification, emotional healing, and spiritual growth, offering hope to those facing similar struggles. This is the story of the Detox Dude with Josh Macin. Josh, so nice to have you on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes.
So the Detox Dude, I mean, obviously you're big on detox, like,
Yeah.
and before I even get to your story of how you became the Detox Dude, why'd you go with that name?
Why did I go with that name? Well, I loved detox when I started to learn about it and find out about it. And I had a
Yeah.
friend who was kind of helping me through the journey, and we thought we were going to open up a business together. So we called it Detox Dudes. And then turns
Wow.
out a week later, he was like, yeah, this isn't really for me. So, yeah. Yeah. So,
Probably a good thing. It's always tough
yeah.
to work with friends, right? It's like friends and
Yeah.
family. I work with my father, so I know this. It could be tough, but so you're the Detox Dude now.
Plus, actually, I think it was better because we do a lot of community-based events. So Detox Dudes is more encompassing versus just Detox Dude. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. And obviously, we live in this day and age where everything around us is basically a potential toxin, the fragrances, the EMF, like so many things. When you go back to your story of getting into this and finding out about the mercury, how long was it before you really started to pinpoint toxicity as this root cause for what you're going through?
well, when I was living in the Amazon jungle when I was ill, I
Yeah.
decided to move to the Amazon because I was not in love with the Western system. And I thought, oh, you know what? These shamans will have the answer, and it's a spiritual crisis. And partially I was right, but it's not obviously the whole truth. So when I was there, I met a lot of people who were doing cleanses. Now, these were the basic type cleanses where you have maple syrup and lemon and the master cleanse. And one person was doing like Epsom salt and olive oil. Another person was doing only lemon water for 20 days. So these were still good fasts and cleanses, but they weren't addressing heavy metals and parasites. So I started learning about detox in the Amazon jungle when I started seeing what was coming out of my colon through ayahuasca, through my fasts. I was drinking juice for 7 days in a row, but I was evacuating every single day. And the smells were unbelievable. So I was like, wait a minute. If I'm not eating and this is coming out of me and it's this color and it smells this bad, there has to be something to this whole detox world. I brought very few books with me in the Amazon. One of the books I brought was The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity by Daniel Reed, or the Tao. And basically, that book teaches about doing 7-day cleanses 4 times a year, right, with bentonite clay and psyllium husk. And that's when I started diving deep into that. It wasn't until years later that I actually understood there was another tier to the detox journey. When you start talking about intracellular detox, because you could juice fast all you want, but if your brain is destroyed from heavy metals, if your nerves are fried, if you have bad parasites, none of these surface level colon cleanses are going to, really, I mean, they'll make you feel better than the average American, but you're not going to get where you really need to go. So it was years later that I learned about the intracellular world and binders and chelators and all of this other stuff. And that's when my world completely changed, and my life, that's when I got my life back.
Yeah, I mean, your journey is really interesting to go to a place like the Amazon to do ayahuasca to purge and to still come out and be like, there is more, right? That,
Yeah.
that was part of the journey, and the journey is kind of this ever winding, one of realization of finding new things. About that ayahuasca, I think you said you did it like 31 times or something, ayahuasca,
Correct.
right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Why that many? Like some people would say, oh, I thought it was only one time. You're supposed to have
Yeah.
revelations and change your life over it. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
understand or think it's a quick fix. Can you talk about your experience with ayahuasca?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say to start, I'm a very all or nothing type of individual. I'm very disciplined. And when I believe something has even a glimmer of hope at the end of the line. I will go through anything in order to get there. So I saw light at the end of the tunnel on the ayahuasca path. I could see how it was changing me. I could see how it was making me more present, connected to God, connected to the spaceship of Earth. It woke me up. It was like a hammer into my consciousness that, from this Jersey, I'm from the East Coast as well, from
Nice.
this Jersey arrogant jiu-jitsu fighter to like, like more loving, grounded, spiritual being, and that it was changing me, right? Or I was allowing it to change me and changing myself in the process. And so because of that, I did feel like there was hope. The other thing is that the level of torment that I was going through mentally, emotionally, spiritually, no one in the Western world that I had locked eyes with or conversed with, I didn't feel that they understood what I was dealing with. So I was with psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, and when you're dealing with an illness, you can look at someone and feel if that person has been through those neurological patterns, if they've made it to if you can feel if they know what you're talking about, if they've experienced it. And when you don't feel that, it's hard to trust, it's hard to go all into that path, right? It's like, all right, this guy, my one psychiatrist went to Harvard, read all the books, but he had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what I was going through other than having maybe seen other clients go through it. So in the jungle, the shamans would look at you and they gave you a look that they knew exactly what you were going through. It's like they had been there, they had been down that road, if only for one ceremony. They'd seen that level of torment. And because of that, I felt, okay, these guys, they know me. There's something here. There's a magic here. And unfortunately, it was more complicated than that because ayahuasca wasn't the thing that really changed my life. But that's why I stuck with it. They suggested that I do dietas, which is like apprenticeships, and I did those, and they were difficult, very, very difficult. And I felt that was my line, and that was my spiritual path. That's why I stuck with it.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a really good point that I hear so much because, of course, my father's a doctor and I speak to patients all the time. If you don't felt understood, your treatment won't work. You may get symptom relief, right? I feel like that's what a lot of conventional doctors do. And I hear this story. I went to my doctor. I had these symptoms. He barely looked at me. He was looking at a chart the whole time, wrote something on a piece of paper, handed it to me and said, okay, take that. We'll see how this works. I didn't feel understood. I didn't feel he got what was really happening. They got what was happening to me. And therefore, there was no kind of human connection, relation to help you evolve to actually find a healing path, right? There's a big difference between treating and healing. And what everyone should seek is that healing. And your story alone kind of shows you can have chapters in the healing. It's not one magic cure. That shaman connected with you, right? That gave you something that took you to the next level in the healing path. So let's talk about that next step, because the ayahuasca brought you into some stage of, spiritual growth, enlightenment, things like that. But it wasn't everything. What was the next chapter after that?
Yes. And I'll say, based on what you just said, there's a very important line, which is treat the person, not the symptoms.
Yes.
Right. And that's a totally different world to what many doctors and how they operate. And so the shamans were treating me. Mm-hmm. They weren't holding me to my symptoms and all of my chaos. They saw right through it all, and they saw me. So what was next was basically a journey where I started to learn through different doctors and teachers and books about the next level of detox. And I got heavy metal tested, and my heavy metals were off the charts. And that is when I started to understand, wow, heavy metals can really make a person sick. I couldn't fathom that. Even living in the Amazon, I couldn't fathom it. I thought, I'm fasting, I'm juicing. This has to get rid of all of the bad stuff. There's no way any other toxins could be affecting me, right? And then I learned about mercury and how sinister that is, and what it does to the myelin sheath and the brain, and it fries you. And when I started And then I started learning about a leaky gut. And when you have chronic heavy metal poisoning, you almost always have leaky gut. And if you just address the heavy metals, you're going to be in for an even further world of hurt. So that's when I started healing my gut, doing parasite cleanses, doing heavy metal chelation. And this was over a 8 month period of time that I was recovering after 3.5 years of ayahuasca, fasting, yoga, meditation, mantras, all of the other stuff that I was doing. And, there's further levels and layers to it. I mean, there was a lot of spiritual, emotional stuff that I had to clear. There are, noxious energies that come along when you have sickness that, hang around you. There's bad substances, there's heavy metals, there's also noxious energies, as above, so below. And I had to learn how to clear these things that were I mean, really, the best word is haunting, right? I was haunted by certain multi-generational curses and energies, and so I had to clear that. And that's a whole other body of work that we talk about. But on a physical side, purely physical, the heavy metal chelation, the parasite detox, the binder protocols change. I mean, I was resurrected from the dead because I was non-functional, throwing up on a daily basis, fainting on a daily basis, had lost 30 plus 25, 30 pounds, unable to function on a minute to minute basis. Like on my other window here, I have homes that I'm looking at in Brentwood. I couldn't even like open up a window and like open up a Zillow app to look at a home. I would go into a panic attack, right? That's the level of, I couldn't even fill out the forms on one of my practitioners who I worked with many years ago. I couldn't even fill out the forms. I had to have a friend on a phone call saying, okay, Josh, put your name now. Now you put your name. Now you put your birthday. And then I would cry and I would cry, I can't do it. Like, Josh, you got this, calm down. And he would coach me through a 1-page document, right? And I was a jiu-jitsu world champion. I worked at Microsoft. I was a very smart person. Like, I mean, now I'm running a big like a big company. That's the level of fracturing that I was had endured, right? It was, I mean, I forget, I forget what it was like because I'm a different person now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Like brain fog is one of those misunderstood. And you can't really, even your description of everything, no one can actually empathize with it in a sense because it's very hard. And I've spoken to people, really bright people such as yourself, that have had that same thing, whether it was with mold, Lyme disease, mercury, there's different ways, right? But that ability, someone was telling me they were sitting there looking at what was their shoes and they didn't know what to do with them. I don't like, do I put them, like, do I wear them on my head? Like the brain couldn't work properly. And this is a very smart person. So it's wild. And I feel like so many on a much more nuanced basis are impacted by this, right? It's just the general fatigue, forgetfulness, sort of, you feel a little foggy at times. And so much of that goes back to toxicity. Now, heavy metal toxicities is a bitch. It's like, it's tough because you say it, like when they get in there, it's usually neurological. They go into the tissue. It's difficult to remove. Yeah. You bring up binders, and there's a lot of different thoughts on this by so many experts on what to do, whether it's, EDTA heavily, or first you have to boost the organs of elimination so that you could get it out. Because a lot of times we know if you do heavy chelation, your organs aren't ready. That could just push it into your system and drop it back in your brain where it wasn't before. It was maybe in connective tissue giving you some arthritic pain or joint pain, but now you boosted it into the brain because it couldn't get out of the body. And that screwed you even more. So it's like when I hear people say, oh, just do chelation, I don't think it's that simple of an answer. But what are your thoughts on binders and how to truly get rid of heavy metals from the body?
Yeah, I like that you said that. So one of the first people I went to was an acupuncturist who wasn't that well versed in heavy metal chelation, and he gave me cilantro tinctures as the first measure. That was my first thing. That annihilated me, right? So it's very counterintuitive. You would think someone has heavy metals. If we get rid of them, they'll get better. But When you have heavy metals, there's a whole cascade of negative symptoms that come as an after effect that you have to treat first before you get the heavy metals out of the cells. And that's leaky gut. That's the degradation of the nerves. That's all these other things, malnourishment, right? Acidic environment in general because of the heavy metals, right? So basically, what I started doing, and I learned this from a couple different teachers, is that first thing I did is I took a mast cell stabilizer to heal my gut. And then I was able to tolerate a lot more supplements and a lot, because even if you take someone severely ill, you would think, okay, chlorella, wheatgrass, spirulina, these are all very good things, but they destroy people who are very sensitive, who have mast cell issues, who have leaky gut. So you first worry about healing the leaky gut, calming down the mast cells. Then we introduce things called binders, which basically, the long and short of binders, there's a lot of different binders. Some are synthesized, some are, found in nature, but they will grab onto toxins and help you eliminate them without going into the cell. So a lot of the binders are going to clean the low-hanging fruit, the heavy metals and the toxins that are floating around in the gut, sometimes floating around in the blood. And this will not cause the same type of negative reaction as a chelator. So you get the person healthier, more centered, more clear, and their nervous system calmer through the use of binders like clays, zeolites, enteros gel, pectins. One of my favorites is True Carbon Cleanse from Warren Phillips, who's a really good friend. You should get him on your show too. There's a bunch of different other binders we use, microsilica and there's chitosans and stuff like that. So anyway, once someone takes binders, they are usually in a much better place of health some months later. And then you can start taking them through a chelation journey. So yeah, binders are crucial. I've had hundreds of people go from suicidal, can't function, near death, severe depression, panic attacks every day, from just gut healing and binders to go to completely normal functioning humans again. Now they're not in their A game because binders are only one step of the puzzle, but the fire gets put out.
Yeah. And that's what's most important. You have to prioritize addressing root causes. And it has to go with the ones that are obviously the most toxic for you and causing the most, and then going from there into the other layers of that onion that you're peeling back.
Yes.
The layers are always going to be different, but do you see, because I see this at least in our practice and speaking with our doctors, that there are patterns to it. Everyone's individual. Whether it's your emotional trauma, you have to, really look at energetic, nutritional deficiencies, pathogens. There's so many things that may be your root causes that you need to address. But have you seen in working with people and even looking at your own journey that there are patterns that, yes, we need to reduce our toxic burden on our body. We need to address the emotional triggers and things like that. And we need to nourish the body with certain, good food. What are your patterns?
Yeah. Exactly. Like fundamentals across all of humanity, right? It's like the way someone treats themselves, right? How they think, how they choose to think over a particular situation, which is their own free will. No matter how sick you are, you have control over how you choose to think about a situation, right? I know people who are like, will literally not go outside because of the chemtrails. Well, that's a dead end. Yes, maybe there are chemtrails, maybe there's all of this stuff fucking our life up, but the way you choose to respond to it is your free will. And when you go into a little dark hole, that's your own prerogative, right? That's in my opinion, a bad choice, right? So these are the fundamentals, the way you choose to think about your symptoms, even if you have symptoms, right? And then there's self-honesty. A lot of people are not honest with themselves and authentic and true to themselves. They're in terrible relationships and blaming everything on the mold, right? They have mold issues, but their husband's abusing them. They have no freedom, no sense of self-worth. They have no sense of self-love. Okay, but you're just going to focus on the mold? That's absurd, right? Yeah. And yeah, and I would say the other basic principles is the toxin avalanche with the products and the, everyone should get rid of that. Everyone should drink clean water. Everyone should eat clean food, right? Everyone should choose nature and sun and grounding whenever they can. These are fundamentals that I don't care who you are, what level you're at, what your issue is. These are just basics of being a human being if you want a happy life and a long life. And then, yeah, and then it goes much deeper into, different organs and different symptoms. But honestly, most people can heal from the fundamentals.
And the fundamentals to me,
Yeah.
are like, they're axiomatic. They're almost self-evident. Like everything you just
Yeah.
said, I wouldn't be like, well, I have a counterpoint that I don't believe we should
Yeah.
be in sun. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that just
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Then why are so many people freaking unhealthy? It's like everything that I tell people like you, I'm like, all right, get out in the sun more, breathe, like don't take in toxic things. People just nod their head. They're like, yeah, that makes total
Yeah.
sense. And then they
Yeah.
don't do it, right? And then they live their rat race, eat like shit,
Yeah.
complain all the time, negative
Yes.
attitudes, like you say, stay in bad relationships and blame the one thing outside of that they don't have control over, as they say.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we have 60, 70% that are now chronically ill. Children are getting sicker and sicker. And yet we have the knowledge. Why aren't we applying it?
I think there's two things there. The first thing is, I think even with the knowledge, I think that the toxins are so, what's the word? Sneaky.
Mm,
So if you look at, you can buy a non-toxic product and it still is loaded. You can just go to the airport and go buy you can buy something that seems like it would be clean or clean enough, and it's loaded with. I think that it takes a certain amount of daily sort of will and understanding of this world to really protect yourself. And I think a lot of people, unless they're in pain, they're just too lazy for that.
mm,
Like I'll give you an example. Okay, I rarely do this, but I'm drinking a tea bag right now, right? And it's
yeah.
it's a plastic tea bag, right? And I still choose to do it sometimes if it's all I have, but things like that, it takes a lot of work to be able to really remove all of the toxins. But also, let's say someone is just making bad decisions. I think that there's just so much negative momentum in most people's life
Mm,
that they don't know how to get into that state where they're taking care. There's so much short-term dopamine in this
yep.
life right now, and they can't actually get to the point where they realize that they will be more happy with the harder decision. Like if they don't eat, and I think people are just fractured and fried, and they're
Yeah.
just lost in panic and anxiety every day and survival, and they just can't get to that over the hump where they're able to calmly make grounded decisions that are going to benefit their future. People are so stuck in the immediate, like 5 minute dopamine, right?
Yep.
Like their world is just the next dopamine. And but
It's
I don't have the exact answer. I know what
uh,
it's like to suffer and to not be able to choose the light, and I have compassion, and I know what it's like to be able to make every single choice be one choice for my future. It is such a happier life when you choose the
right.
future, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Like I love hearing these answers. I love getting like, guests to speak about because I do think obviously it's a big issue for most of society and so many people we love are dealing with it. We know people suffering. So we want to be able to address it, but at the same time, it is sort of like, there's at least to me, there's this lack of putting health first.
Mhm.
There's this sort of, you can always have an excuse for something, and it is hard work. And I will say, healing is an uphill battle, but it's transformative. You will go through an
Yes.
alchemical transmutation and come out the other side changed for the better. And
Yes.
therefore, it may be a blessing because it's getting you into a higher evolved state
Yes.
and leading you to maybe a truer kind of path of what you need to
Yes.
be on. But to do that and only want a pill to get there is not realistic. It's the person that wants
Yes.
to be a millionaire overnight without doing any work. It's like, then it wouldn't even be worth it. You wouldn't even
Yes.
really enjoy it. And I think that's where people need to get into that long-term approach. And I know everyone wants to be an overnight billionaire now because $1 million isn't cool anymore. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's kind of, we have these set things, and yes, they're dopamine, triggers, and we want it. But it's still like, if we could break it down to fundamentals, it is completely worth it to put in that work, to put in a little bit of sacrifice to get so far ahead of the game and find yourself in a minority of people now that are healthy and happy.
Yes.
Just ranting off that, but
No, it's okay. I have another rant to go off of that. So
please.
one thing we teach in my courses is the different, we use the words astral and etheric. Astral being the whole digital success, the social media, crushing life in terms of outer success, money. And then etheric being your internal well-being, the way that you feel with your breath, your thoughts, your heart, your emotions, your immediate surroundings, the plants, the trees, the nature. We're having a loss of an understanding of, and people are associated with their astral identity. Mm-hmm. And so they're able to just make money and crush their astral world. And it feeds their brain enough chemicals to where they can keep going for a certain amount of years. Eventually it crashes. And so when people are stuck in that game, there's no reason to eat healthy. Why would I eat healthy? Because I'm winning, man. Don't you see I'm winning, right? It's only when you have an illness or you have wisdom or whatever, you have a value system, that you start to understand that the way that you feel on a moment-to-moment basis is the ultimate currency.
Yes.
It's the ultimate currency. You can't buy your way to it. It's not, there's no amount of money. A billionaire can spend $1 billion and still not feel his heart. That's right. and his emotions, right? Yeah. And they try to. They'll buy prostitutes and cocaine and this and that, right? But ultimately, what everyone is chasing is a feeling of it's a hum of well-being inside, right? Mm. And I have it a lot. I don't have it every day, every minute of every day, but I have it a lot. And there's nothing I would trade for it now that I know what it's like to have. Yeah. Right. And so all of that is to say that people are stuck in that other world. And I don't think they understand this whole other dimension. And if they did, they wouldn't eat the pizza. They wouldn't drink the beer because it destroys you. Yeah. On this level. Yeah. You might still make money. You might still be famous, but okay. Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? I feel like technology, social media, they are tools. I'm not going to say they're good or bad. We've just probably been using them in the improper ways, especially from a young age on. And the idea of success, winning are all in that astral plane, as you talk about, and then posted for the world to see, to then become, wanting of that and desiring the same thing through the pictures without knowing the backstory, the suffering maybe that is still there. What do you tell the people? Like, what are the steps to get out of that? It's incredibly hard. Listen, I even get it. I didn't grow up. Like, my first cell phone came out like when I was 19 or 18 or 19, right? So I didn't live with a, and even then it was like one of those Nokia brick phones, like Saved by the Bell style, Zach. And it was only until like I was in my 20s that true smartphones came out. And even myself, I find myself sometimes like reaching for it and just doing endless scroll at times. And I'm very vigilant of this stuff. I talk about it a lot. I talk to people like you and like, no digital detoxes and get out there in nature without it and don't put it around when other people are around. But how do you work with people that are already in it? Because it seems like this is like a drug addiction that's very difficult. People have a very difficult time breaking it. And you're talking about for some people since, they were very young. So it's like a belief system. When it's ingrained, sometimes it's just subconscious, and those are really difficult to break. What are the steps to like breaking free of the dopamine rush?
I mean, wow, what a difficult thing to answer. I mean,
Is awareness like a starting point to at least say to yourself that this is impacting me negatively?
My experience is that if someone is not in pain, they will not recognize it as a true problem. Right. A lot of people that I work with, I don't try and change where they're at They want performance enhancement in terms of detox. They want to have a clearer mind. That's one tier of category of people that we work with. And I usually don't try and change their world too much. But there's a whole category of people who were once that and it collapsed. And those are the people who are willing to truly listen and truly listen to what I have to offer. The other people, they'll listen to my supplements, they'll listen to my detox, they don't really care about my worldview. Because why? Because they're dominating life, right? Yeah. They're dominating life. I don't have time to make any changes. I'm making so much money. It doesn't fucking matter, dude. Right? Right. But then eventually, like I said, that will end. That will expire. It's not sustainable. The people who have had that collapse is when they start to really be open and to learn. And for those people, it's basic steps. I keep my phone in my car. Every night I put my phone in my car, right? And I do this because first thing in the morning, it is so easy to grab it. And when it's in my car, it gives me that buffer zone. Yeah. Right. And even 10 or 20 minutes without it is very different because I get to catch my thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. I get to catch my thoughts and take stock of how I'm feeling that day before I reach for that dopamine, which forever will change my mind for the entire day. As soon as I get on the internet, my mind is different the whole day, right? And so I don't have an exact formula, but I like to really just teach people how to get into their etheric, their body, and that's done with a whole number of practices. And then also we do retreats, which is, I would say, the number one thing is if someone can go to a retreat where they have days without phones. So we do 6 days with no phones, right? And that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. You could change your life in 6 days with no phone. Or at least you could come to the side and see what it's like, right? Because at least once a year, I'll do just like a getaway, a trek. And, I was just in Bhutan a couple months ago, and there's no cell service there, no nothing. You just put your phone away. It's literally a camera. That's it. Yeah. Or just, once it dies, it's just a paperweight. But it's liberating. Like at first you get a little sketchy. You're like, oh man, like I wonder if emails are coming in. I wonder if this is how, what if someone's texting me that's important, right? Yeah. You start doing that in your mind, but a day or two, just like hiking in nature, you just suddenly change. Yes. You go into that like really nice parasympathetic, balance with sympathetic and not over too far. And you just feel different. So I think it's really important. And another point you made there is, I think we try to avoid rock bottoms when rock bottoms are great places because you can only go up and you realize something from it, right? Yes. You need to change. We avoid that usually with drugs, alcohol, different things,
Exactly. Making money.
Right. And so you're feeling a little suffering and then you do something to get out of it rather than embrace it, hit rock bottom and bounce up higher and then learn something from it. So it's like, I always tell people, like, your chronic disease may seem terrible. It's rock bottom. You can't get out of bed. You can't think of things. You're calling people. How do I fill out this form? Like you said, but that is an initiating factor for change. You have 100%. To change. There's no way. Your life depends on change.
Yes.
And so then you're forced to look at everything and say, how could I get better rather than compensating off of that? So, I mean, if someone's out there listening right now, maybe feeling like they're going or, towards rock bottom, suffering from something, only living in that astral plane with not feeling fulfilled, how can they start getting to work with you? And what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I would tell them to go to all my free stuff, just go. But before even working with me, just open up your mind to this whole world, right? Because it's really basic what we're talking about. We're talking about getting rid of shitty substances, right? Drugs, gluten, alcohol, all of the different foods with toxins, all the different, like, even if you look at like mainstream articles, Bloomberg just came out with an article, cancer causing products in sunscreen and this and that. All of the mainstream, you can't fight it anymore. You cannot argue against toxins anymore. It's everywhere. And all the articles are coming out. All the scientists are saying, hey, it's a real thing. These guys aren't pseudoscience crazy lunatics. It's real and it's affecting our cells and our health, right? So you get rid of that stuff, okay? you begin a path of self-love where you value yourself, your sovereignty, your own uniqueness. You know, you value yourself and you let the conditioning melt away. Question everything. Question everything. Question money. Question how you're making money. Question, do you need to work for an employer? Do you need to do, question everything, right? Because I will tell you, being on this side as sovereign, traveling the world, healthy, an amazing wife, an amazing family, you can have an amazing life. There's no, I was possessed. I was a dead man walking. I was as dark as you could possibly go without dying. All right. And and I'm in an amazing state of consciousness on a regular basis now. And I'm telling you that because there is no uncurable thing. There's no thing in anyone's life that, obviously when someone is like a paraplegic or this or that, that's not my world and that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just talking about this vessel in terms of disease and ailments and mental issues, right? And so you can heal from anything. It takes work. You got to dive deep into yourself. You need to want to change. And the tools and technologies are out there. We are advancing in unbelievable ways. There's never been a better time to be sick. Okay. And you can heal from anything. You can heal from anything. And where I was to where I am now, I mean, I wouldn't have even thought it was possible in this lifetime. Yeah. And so when you clean this vessel and you value yourself and you direct this sword of the mind in the right directions, you can do anything. Yeah. Anything. Right.
In that whole, like, ethos of you are this miraculous self-healing being, capable of so many things, regardless of where you are right now and how you feel right now. Where does purpose kind of fall into that? Because I see this a lot, Josh. I see people that are like, I want to get better, right? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then they start to get better, but then they get scared because, like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to, I haven't worked in 10 years. Like, give me the disease. That felt comfortable. And they do it and they become diseased again, even though they're feeling great. And they're like, oh, it didn't work. It's like, whoa, that's weird. You didn't have purpose, I feel. But what are your thoughts on that?
This is my entire body. This is what I teach about in all my courses. It's the most important question to ask, right? It's a conversation of will. Human beings are creatures of will, and idle hands make the devil's workshop, right? Healing full time doesn't work. You will be sick if you're healing full time because you're just reinforcing that you're broken, right? Yeah. If you're trying to fix yourself all the time, you're just reinforcing that you're broken. So engaging the will, as soon as you have enough energy to go for a walk, you should be engaging your will and start challenging yourself and start pushing your edge. Every human being needs an edge. That's how we learn. It's how we thrive. Animals in nature, a lion doesn't know when its next meal is, doesn't know what the weather will be like, doesn't know where it will sleep, and they're in their prime. You take a lion and put it in a zoo, and they get cancer, right? They get miserable, they get depressed. And so it's about learning that the flaw or the superpower of a human being is that a human being cannot do nothing. You think you go on a vacation, and I've been to Bora Bora at a Four Seasons, $3,000 a night hotel. And I'm like, this is going to be paradise. I'm there for 48 hours. After 48 hours, I'm like, fuck, I'm complaining about things. I'm bored. It's raining and I'm complaining about the rain, right. Complaining about the weather, right? Yep. Complaining because of this, that, the food. Being on a private island in paradise is nice for 3 days. And then your will needs to be engaged again. We're creatures of will, creatures of creation. We have to, and so everyone, if they listen, if they quiet down and listen, they will find some inner artwork that wants to come out, whether it's a writing or a video or a post it can be anything. There's this artwork that everyone has inside, and you have to give it to the world, or it's soul suicide if you don't. Yeah. You have to.
And it doesn't have to be grand or even practical in your ways. Like, I knew someone that wanted to open up a shop all about cheeses, like from around the world. She was really into cheese and just have wines there. She's like, but it doesn't, I make so much more money doing what I do. And I was like,
Yeah.
follow your heart. And it's like, well, it's
Yes.
not practical. Follow it. You're
Yes.
miserable doing what you do. I mean, I think
Yes.
that's a big part of it too, is this idea. And you see people like Carnivore Aurelius and all these other type of figures out there of like, go back to nature, like give up that big paying job and just live practically and grow stuff and spend time just in nature more and don't worry about trying to make 6 7 figures or anything.
But I think they'll make 6 7 figures even with the cheese
That
shop.
point too, yeah, if you put
You
yourself
become,
into it,
yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
become
you
the best
could,
at what you do, and you're
yeah,
going to make money. Money is never the North Star, but it's always a side effect. When you crush it,
yes,
she would just have the best store, the most exotic cheeses, and get unique and interesting and creative and do things different than anyone else. Then you end up having a Netflix documentary made after you. You know what I
very
mean?
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. And I don't think it should be about money per se, but money
Yeah.
will be the end result because it is a form of energy and you are
Yes.
living in a energy giving environment that will come
Yes.
back to you and reciprocate, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like the crux of society, I feel. We
Yeah.
get pigeonholed into jobs we don't like,
Yeah.
eating things we don't want to put into our body and thinking things that aren't to our best, evolution, and
Yeah.
then complaining about it when we are all given this opportunity to live as we want and with our purpose being the first thing that is guiding us, right? That is our North
Yes.
Star. And yet we
Yes.
abandon it and find ourselves lost.
Yes.
And in that, we find ourselves being miserable, anxious, all these other
Yes.
things. We talked a lot about this idea, concept, of course, of detoxification being so important. Where does, and you've talked about being spiritually enlightened and passion. I think people get really kind of mixed up about healing medicine and this idea of spirituality. How do you define spirituality and how important it is in the healing process?
Sorry, can you ask the question in a different way? I'm a little.
Sure. So most people find medicine and the idea of overcoming chronic disease to be a physical one, to
Ah.
be one of I need to correct my lab numbers. I
Yeah.
need to address my
Yeah.
pathologies and
Yeah.
deficiencies that are showing up in
Yes.
labs. And I see nothing of any importance in even mentioning the word spiritual here.
Yes. Oh,
Some people
beautiful.
laugh when we're like, oh,
Yes.
mind, body, spirit. They're like,
Yeah.
whatever, that's stupid.
This is the classic flaw of society, which comes from Rudolf Steiner would call it Ahrimanic forces. So,
Mm,
Ahrimanic, Luciferic forces being in the world of materialism, not like materialism like the product bag, but materialism as in that it's just a physical body that needs to be fixed, right?
yeah,
And that is, it is so, it is so narrow. It is
yeah,
so narrow and missing such a wide range of what's possible on this planet. And so much so that I think maybe I'm on the other side of things where people sign up for detox coaching and I'm like, hey, actually, you just got to break up with your husband, whatever. You need to get a divorce because that, yeah. But spirituality is, first of all, it's how can someone truly heal without the humility to understand that there's something larger than ourselves out here, right? That humility is the most soothing, healing balm on the planet. If you think you're everything and you are, and that's prison.
yeah,
That's torture, and that's really difficult. And I've seen people, I will tell you, I have seen people for decades try and heal from chronic illness from a purely materialistic place where it's all about numbers and lab work. They are never where they want to be.
mm,
Never, right? They're
right,
always chasing something and always in some sort of hole, right? And so the human experience is not perfect. No one's going to be perfectly healed. We have to combine, in my opinion, combine the physical stuff where we are putting the best stuff into our cells, the detoxing all of the bad shit, but at the same time recognizing the magnificence of the spirit and the spiritual wonder of
mm,
being a human being. And so for me, spirituality is wonder. Okay, it's the belief in that there might be something else on this planet other than your own mind, okay, your own thoughts. And I would also say authenticity is one of the greatest forms of spirituality. Authenticity being different than, let's say, sincerity, because
Mm,
some people can be very sincere and doing the right things and wanting to be a good person and all of that. But authenticity is a cut deeper, where you're able to know your own bullshit. Okay.
right.
Authenticity has a certain flavor to it, and a lot of people don't know how to just be themselves in a given situation. They're so afraid of wanting to be liked, wanting to be loved. If they're too much, if they're going to be kicked out of the tribe if they say the wrong things, are they going to sound smart, right? People are more concerned with being right versus being authentic. And so authenticity is also being real. Like, most of us are very sensitive creatures.
Mhm.
Most men have no ability to express their sensitivity and their vulnerability, and they'll put on a machismo character instead, that they're the man. We all are hurt when someone says something bad about us. We're all terrified of other people. Okay.
Right.
We're all care about what other people think. Like there's just a simple human nature. To me, that's spirituality.
Mm,
And we have gotten so far away from that with these internet superheroes and the Andrew Tates of the world. Like that's not, for me, that's not masculinity. And it doesn't matter, man or woman. It's just being real.
right.
Being real will heal you,
Yep.
right? It will literally heal you when you just get through all the bullshit and you just say, oh, wow, actually, I'm really hurt. Okay, great. Now you can heal. Now you can start the journey versus the anger or the bullshit or the tough guy character that comes when you're hurt. You have no chance.
Yeah.
It's not even, you're not even in a state of authenticity or honesty. Does that make sense?
It does. It's
Yeah.
it's a really good place of understanding for what spirituality is, because I find so many people are just disconnected from the word itself. Like,
Yeah.
to live a spiritual, what does that mean? Religious? Does that mean some, God you
Yeah.
have to follow, and these rules and morals and
Yeah.
principles of a book or something, when
Yeah.
it is about the true authenticity and really honoring yourself and understanding that we live on these different planes. And the most basic one is the body. And
Yes.
then it elevates to the mind and finally the spirit. If you want to talk about vibrations or consciousness, like, that's kind of where it goes. And like you said, people
Yeah.
like Rudolf Steiner and others talked about it. Like, the most important is the spirit, then the mind, and then the body is just the vessel, right? It's
Yeah.
just this thing you
Yeah.
rent out for this life, but that's it. And take care
Yeah.
of it and honor that too. But do understand we're spiritual beings living in the
Yes.
physical realm.
Yes.
So we're in this new year, 2025. What are you excited for this year? It's wild to think we're like a quarter of a century into this, and
Yeah.
2100s around the corner now. But yeah, we've come a long way in understanding of things like toxins and seeing everything. But what is it you're looking at right now, kind of getting excited about?
Yeah, I would say on like macro level, just
Yeah.
in the world, I really see positive things happening with that guy Cali Means, I think his name
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just what those guys are doing on a political level with the toxins and the food. I mean, make America healthy again, right? All of that. I'm really excited about that. I do think that's a really good movement. Um, and I just feel like people in our industry, we're kind of like gold miners. Like, this is like a gold mine. I mean,
Yeah.
and just from a purely business standpoint, like, what better I didn't start a detox company because I thought it was going to make me a lot of money. But like, this is the best industry to be in the world, because you get to help people and you get to eventually make a lot of money if you build a name for yourself. Like, it's an amazing industry, right?
It could be so fulfilling, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
it's what everyone's seeking. It's like, wow, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good time for that.
Yeah, it's a great time for that. So I'm excited about business and growth and starting my own supplement line and all of that.
Mm,
Excited about where the world is headed in terms of solutions to all of this stuff. I just think it's going to keep getting worse and worse, but at the same time, better and better, depending on your
mm,
paradigm. It's like I don't
yes.
live in, there's just two different paradigms going on at the same time, and you can choose to be in misery and hell, or you can step out of it. And there's always a way to combat everything. There's the, EMFs protection, EMF protecting, there's cell protection. You can always know how to navigate to protect your energy, no matter how shitty things get. And that's what I've been doing for 8 years. And, all just on a personal level, I have a new baby, so that's really exciting.
Congrats.
And what I've found in my life, which is just the most beautiful testament to this work, if I look back, all I do, in a given year is I work, I cleanse my body, I detox, I complain, I have my pains, I have my issues, I have my crying, I have this. But if I look back a year, okay, I literally become a different, better person every single year, and more grounded, more centered, more light, more clear. And I know it has to do with this long-term trajectory of detox. Like, I feel when you detox year after year after year, and you keep going with it, you look at people who aren't detoxing, who aren't taking care of their bodies, and it's almost like a different species or something. It's like, wait a minute, you're eating Wendy's and this and that and Coca-Cola. Like, you're just like it's a different. So to answer your question, I'm excited about where I keep going with this cleansing process. I mean, it's like, it just changes my life every year in sometimes subtle ways, sometimes very obvious ways. But I am becoming a man that I didn't even know was possible, and I love that.
That is the transmutation. That is the constant evolution we should all be looking for. Change is, there is uncertainty to it and fear and challenges and change, but it's necessary. We know this. And I feel like a lot of people stay in a stagnant place, and stagnation is death, slow death. But and to the other point you said there, my father always used to say to since seminars, it's not what you put into the body, it's what you take out of the body. Everyone's looking for more supplements and how many hundreds of pills can you take and the new peptides I can inject and all this. I'm like, that's cool. Like, I do that stuff too. But I also realize it's what I take out of the body. It's sometimes simpler. People like, what's your supplement? Must be crazy. It's like, I go off intuition and how I feel, and I try to minimize it. I try to keep it as minimal of what I'm putting in. And then, of course, it's like good quality water that's going to help me, get things out and other things, and watching to make sure things don't go in that I don't want, and making sure they come out. So I think that's really essential, and it just makes it simpler when we're just more focused on eliminating and cleansing than constantly adding things in to a place that's already cluttered with not great stuff.
Totally.
So awesome message in everything you're doing. How could people connect with you? Do you have any retreats coming up?
Sure. thedetoxdudes.com, and then it's Instagram at Joshua Macin. And then I just started a new YouTube channel, which is called, I used to have the Detox Dudes, but I started a new one, more spiritual based. It'll be called Joshua Macin. And I just releasing my first video last week, second video today. And a retreat will be in June or July. That's a men's retreat. And you can go on my website to shares how we do group coaching and one-on-one coaching, and we have courses and all of that stuff.
Very cool. Well, Josh, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I really vibed on this, and continue to do your great work and help in this world detox, because we need it.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And be sure to visit Josh's website, thedetoxdudes.com, Instagram, as he mentioned, Joshua Macin, that's Macin. And we'll include all these links in the social media channels in the show notes. And until next time, continue writing your own healing story.